Let's rip it.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Boga Hunting Podcast. Today we have two very special guests from the Pope and Young Club here today. Guys, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jason Rounsavill. I'm the executive director.
All right.
I would say you got one special guest, and that's Jason. But,
I don't know.
Dylan, you're not special, man?
Hey,
not at all, my friend.
Dylan's he's probably got 10 or 15 days in the field since I've been out there. So I'd call that more special than this.
That's true. That's more time in the field.
Absolutely.
Well, my name is Dylan Ray, and I am the marketing director at Pope and Young.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we had messaged, I think, Dylan, you and I a little bit coming into this. Obviously, growing up, Jared and I and a lot of people in the hunting industry know of Pope and Young. But, I mean, before we get into that, tell us about yourself. How did you guys get involved with the organization? What's your background in hunting? What's your story?
Well, mine, I'll jump right in there because I'm really shy and all. So all I've ever wanted to do growing up was hunt and fish. And so obviously I went to college, got a degree in wildlife biology.
Yeah.
Was able to stay in the outdoor field, wound up going into business, for employment, but stayed in the outdoor field doing volunteer work for some conservation organizations and was a volunteer for several years. And then was invited to join staff at Ducks Unlimited, was there for a long time. And this opportunity came up to help lead Pope and Young.
Yeah.
Seemed like a good fit. I'd been a lifelong hunter, bow hunter for about 30 years. And it's been a good fit. It's been a lot of fun. And I've learned a ton, met some amazing people.
That's awesome.
So much like Jason, my passion has always been bow hunting. And so when I went to college, I wanted to find a job that I really loved to do. And so I worked my way through college by working at a bow shop.
Nice.
And so I made a lot of good connections that way, made a lot of good friends in the industry. And so I started working for Bear Archery to produce their Hunting 101 podcast.
Yep.
And through that, became pretty good friends with Jim Willems, who was one of the past presidents of Pope and Young, and recorded several times together and did several video projects together. And the opportunity came up for a new marketing director at Pope and Young. And so, I put it in his ear. Hey, I'd love to do that for you guys. And so here I am.
No, that's awesome.
That works.
And Pope and Young is I don't know. It's just a cool place. It's everybody knows of it. It's awesome. It's bow hunting specific. You guys both mentioned you've had quite a bit of experience. I think Jason, you said 30 years of experience. I'm 32. So
Yeah.
That's about most of my life.
Sometimes I don't feel that old until I talk to guys that are 32. But
yeah,
I'm not even 30 years old yet, Jason.
You've been hunting longer than he's been alive.
That explains the difference in abilities there, I think.
I'm sure that's exactly it.
Wisdom, I think it's called wisdom.
Yeah, it's you know what? I just wish I had the energy to do it the way I did in my 20s and 30s. So,
yeah, Jared wishes he had my energy too. I think maybe a younger Jared could have kept up, but
I think anyone with a cup of coffee can probably keep up with you. But
Jason, when you've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at home, it takes less energy to go hunting than it does to stay at home.
Yeah,
I could believe that.
Yep,
that's very true.
I've got a 4, 2, and a 8-month.
So 8 months. I feel like your youngest is aging slow.
It's
wow.
8.
Seems like you've had.
She was a COVID baby.
For her for a long time, but I suppose she was a COVID baby.
Yeah, that was crazy actually. Usually when you have a kid, you can have people come and visit you, and you get some time off, or maybe you can take a nap or two. But not
this time.
Not this time.
Not this go around, huh?
Tough it out, man.
Yep, suck it up. I actually punched out quite a bit of articles while I was just trapped in the room.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you go sit out in the freezing cold just to get away for an hour.
Just some quiet. I don't want to see any deer. It's I'm too busy. I just need a nap.
Yeah, that's too much work. I just want to sit out there, enjoy nature.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So yeah, a lot of bow hunting experience, Jason. That's what it sounds like.
Quite a bit. It's funny because having done it a long time, bow hunting has always been one of the things I've done. It was never the only thing.
Right.
And, where I was before, I could be in a room with an awful lot of duck hunters, 1,000 duck hunters. And, I was towards the top of that, and now all of a sudden I'm at Pope and Young. I'm in the room with 10 bow hunters. I'm not in the top 9, and I'm not even knocking on the door. I mean, some of these guys have been everywhere. They have done it all. And I just sit there in awe and listen to their stories. And it's just, leopards in Africa and all over the world and taking world records. And it's amazing to hear some of those stories. I just love it.
Yeah. When you talk to guys and you say, well, how many animals do you have in the books? And they say, oh, I don't know. I can't keep up. And you're like, good Lord.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, I've got, I think 14 records. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Holy cow. Like, all right. And you know what? No, I want to ask about it now. So these people that you're talking about, we'll go back and we'll get into.
You got to come this way a little bit.
No, I'm not coming that way. He farted and he's trying to make me smell it. For people, like for these people that are entering records in, are they just, is there like a certain type of person that is like, if they have a couple records in their book, it's because they're this way, or is it just a bunch of random guys?
It's both. It's all of the above. We have guys that it is their, I mean, they're not going to, their goal is to get something in the book. They want to get, all the species or all the deer or all the sheep. And so they will pass up an animal, that, especially me or a lot of us would take because it's not the one that they want. And, when you're talking to those guys, the one thing that's consistent across the board is there's unfilled tags left at the end of the year.
Yeah.
If you're hunting those true trophies, you've got to be okay with not punching a tag. But
that's why we have those unpunched tags.
I mean, we really don't want to say
if we're
it.
not punching a tag, that's the reason why.
Okay, so you guys have more self-control because I'm the guy who puts the fork and horn in the freezer, man.
That's right. I like that. Yeah, you're our kind of guy.
Yeah, and so and then on the other side of the spectrum, it's your everyday bow hunters. More of the guys like me who are out there, really enjoy it, but maybe they don't have 30 days to hunt one specific buck, or maybe they're not going to go on a Yukon moose hunt where they're going to see a potential world record.
Yeah.
So those guys, they're out there, they're doing it in their way, they're having fun with it, they're enjoying the experience, and then every once in a while they get an opportunity, like a Luke Brewster, where this guy shoots a world record non-typical whitetail buck, and he's just a great guy, and you love to talk to him because it's just he's a hunter. He just enjoys the hunt. He enjoys being out there, and it's just a great experience.
Yeah.
When you asked that question, Jason, the one name that come to my mind was Alan Bolin. Yeah. And if you're going to shoot world records, you got to be like Alan. That's how it is.
And he shoots them.
Yeah, he does, man. And if you go back and listen to the podcast where we had him on, he says that. He's like, man, I spent 30 some odd days in the field chasing a world record Sitka blacktail. And he's like, I passed up some monsters to get a world record. And I'm just like, man, like I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But he's like, I don't care how many Pope and Young animals I have in the book. I care about how many Pope and Young records I have in the book. And I'm like, I said, you're a different kind of beast, my friend.
Yeah. He that guy is all about intensity too.
Well, and that's a lot of time devoted to a specific thing. Aside from even the days in the field, there's planning and preparing, and you're spending a lot of money to do a lot of these hunts and stuff. Those guys are they're working hard for it for sure.
Yeah, we've been for a lot of years tailored towards that guy, to the guy who has the time and the resources to go all over the world and all over the country to chase stuff. And so recently we've actually tried to open it up. We've adjusted our membership, the way you become a regular member, the number of trophies you have to take, the number of book animals you have to have. So we've adjusted that to help accommodate some of the guys who, is maybe not going to Alaska twice a year.
Right.
And, the guy who he loves bow hunting, he's all about it. And, maybe whitetails are his thing. So we've tried to be more, incorporating of everyone, because when it comes to, items that come up from a legislative perspective, we're the bow hunting organization that's out there fighting for everybody, but not everybody knows that. And
exactly. Yep.
Well, we had to change it because me and Jason always shoot fork and horn, so we
That's
were
right.
excluded from the group.
You have to make it so you fit
Yeah.
in. No, I totally. And
Yeah,
you know what? We guys
absolutely.
like us appreciate that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom got me a shirt, boys. You'll get a kick out of this for Christmas, and it has a spike on it and says Spoon and Crockpot Club.
I like
And,
that spoon and crock.
And she said your employer might not like this too much. I said they'll love it,
Yeah.
especially my boss Jason.
Bring it on.
It's you know, and I've been around some of them. I've got, you know, friends that kill the big ones, but you know, they have the time and the energy, and
Yeah.
and some of it's, you know, I had an antelope hunt this year in Idaho, and my goal was to go out. There was an opportunity to get a Pope and Young buck. It was just happened to be a third season tag, so they'd been hunted for like 2 months.
Right.
And so about 3 days in, I realized that, okay, if I want to do this with a bow, it's going to take me 2 weeks, and I just didn't have it. So
Right.
it's, you know, eventually it just comes down to a decision, and I respect the people that do, and it's neat. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stories from some of our, you know, board members, and one of the ones is one of our board members at the Western Hunt Expo last year won a bighorn hunt on their raffle. So this is a dream. I mean, this is a lifelong dream for most people. And he wins it, and he talks to the outfitter, and the guy's like, he says, "Hey, I'm on the board of Pope and Young." He says, "This is the last sheep I need for my slam. I've just got a new bow set up." And he's talking to the guy, and the guy's like, "Well, we don't take bow hunters." And he says, "Oh, well, in that case, here, you can just auction it off, let somebody else go."
Wow.
And I mean, I'm like, if he'd have told me that, I said, "Hey, pick a caliber. You tell me, and I've got it."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but
I don't discriminate.
it's,
No.
you know, but at the same time, it's a different level. You know, when you hear somebody and say, "Oh, well, I've got my sheep slam," you're like, wow, you're either really lucky or have a few bucks.
Yep.
And then when you hear about a guy, he says, "Well, I've got my sheep slam with a bow," then you better be lucky, have a few bucks, and be able to run up that mountain.
That's
you know,
right.
10 or 12 times to get hopefully one shot. It's a different level, you know, because on a rifle, it's all over at 100 yards, and the 100 yards, there's times you're not even in the game with the bow.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
So,
All the time.
We know that firsthand experience. I mean,
oh yeah.
yeah, I mean that's primarily the weapon that we use, our bows.
Yeah.
I use a compound. James uses a traditional, so he's got it even worse than I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we know that firsthand. There's some times where you know that if you would have had a gun in that situation, you could have been right on that animal. But
Well, I think I can extend my range this year. I got a new strategy. It's you just go kind of lick your finger a little bit like this.
aim high, play the wind.
And then you aim high, you play the wind. And it's a new aiming technique that I'm working on.
Okay. See, now when I started shooting a bow, they didn't have laser rangefinders. So that was the concept. Is you're like, that's about 55, and you know, up you go. I had an 80-pound, you know,
stick
Golden Eagle recurve compound, and man, that thing shot arrows like an arch. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Still using the true stick and string then? Like
Oh yeah.
a stick and a string.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
So we've talked a lot about it. But I want to rewind back. So for everybody that's listening, these guys, Pope and Young, you guys describe what Pope and Young is, how you guys started, and what your mission is.
You bet. We actually started, and I didn't even know this until I came on, and shame on me. You know, I'm from the West Coast out in Oregon, and I had just always assumed that, well, gee, we've always had a bow season. Ever since I've been alive, they've had one. Well, Pope and Young was actually part of the reason they were founded was we didn't have bow seasons 60 years ago. So they had to prove to these state wildlife agencies that a bow and arrow was a legitimate means for cleanly taking big game animals. And so that was part of the reason this record book was established, so that they could say, hey, here's all of these mature animals that have been taken with a bow and arrow. We need to have a bow season. And so that's kind of how they came about, you know, and it started with Ishi in California, who was, you know, the last wild Indian. And he taught these guys how to make bows and how to shoot them. And this entire, you know, the history is just so in depth, but that's basically why we were started, is to help promote bow seasons in the U.S. And now we're, our goal is to be the voice of today's bow hunter. And so we jump in on items every week. Something comes across our desk that affects bow hunters in some way.
Yeah.
And it's so nice to be able to have that singleness of purpose where it's like, okay, is this good for bow hunters? Yes. Okay, then we're for it.
Right.
Is it not good for bow hunters? No, then we're not for it. It's very nice to have such a singular purpose that way.
I think you're more effective that way too. When you have a very specific, narrow focus, like you said, there's a simple litmus test. Is it good for bow hunting or not? That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if you think about some organizations that are so broad and they include so many different things. I mean, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Ducks Unlimited and QDMA. With bow hunting, we can step in and support all of those groups because they all include bow hunting.
Right.
And so that's the beautiful thing about being bow hunting specific is we get to come on board and say, hey, we like to bow hunt elk, so let's help out Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. We like to bow hunt deer, so let's help out QDMA.
Yeah.
And much like Jason, and I don't know, with my generation, I feel like Pope and Young has always been viewed as just a record book. And if you ask my dad's generation, they're like, oh yeah, well they make bow hunting possible. But for us, it's more of just like, I want to kill a PNY animal. I want to kill a Pope and Young animal.
That was how it was for me.
I want to get one in the books.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just like Jason, and probably shame on me for not doing my research, but it wasn't until coming on board with Pope and Young where I was like, holy cow, we're more than just a record book,
Yeah.
They really are the ones that fight for my rights to bow hunt. And so, we're really in that planning phase of how can we teach people that we are more than a record book? How can we show people that we are more than a record book? Because it's a common misconception, but like Jason said, stuff comes across our desk constantly to where we want to fight for the rights of bow hunters and continue to create those new opportunities. And so, we are much more than a record book, but the record book does still stand to continue to create new opportunities for bow hunters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys, how many record categories are there?
Well, there's 29, but we just added velvet category. So for years, you could shoot a velvet, say a mule deer, you could shoot one and you had two options. You either had to strip the velvet off, which, if you get a nice velvet buck, you don't want to do.
You don't want to do that. Right.
No. You could either strip it off and enter it as a hardhorn, or you could measure it, but it would be in, what was quote unquote just a velvet entry. And so recently the board decided that we needed to have categories specifically for the velvet and recognize world record, velvet world records. So I believe that's another 13 species have velvet entries. So
interesting. Okay. How often are these records broken? Like, how long does a record stand?
Some of them are year. I mean, we had the Mel Johnson buck at ATA a couple years ago, and that one's been around. I think since '68 or in the '60s.
Yep.
Wow. So that one's been, and that's a whitetail, which they're hunted every day. And then we have other ones. Last year we had 4 world records broken. We had a brown bear, we had a mountain goat, we had a non-typical mule deer, non-typical whitetail. This year we've had, we've had a black bear. I mean, we're getting a couple a year that are getting.
And the mountain goat had what? Three entries that we had to convene special panel for that were so close to breaking it.
I heard about this.
Yeah, we had 2 that came in. And they were actually both measured by the same measurer, shot in the same general location.
Man.
And they both came in. And it was interesting because they didn't you don't see a lot of, you think of a mountain goat and you don't think, oh, well, the horns could be radically different.
Right.
But I saw them both and it was really interesting. One was kind of long and narrow. The other one was really, not as long, but really thick. So it was pretty interesting, just the differences even in those.
Yeah.
And we do, when we have a potential world record, we convene a special panel. We bring measures in, one of them comes from Boone and Crockett, and we have the best of the best measure these to verify what was sent in. And man, it's a process. I got to be involved with the whitetail with Luke Brewster's buck, and that one, the detail that these guys take measuring those trophies, it's amazing. I mean, I don't have the kind of patience to do that. They are literally, and it's down to the, every little finite detail. It's pretty amazing. It's a special process.
It makes sense that you have to have it that way. If it's such an official thing, you got to be. And there's a certain person that is designed to do that. And like you said, it's definitely not me.
And it ain't me.
No, right. But okay, so say that I go out, I'm on the back three. For you guys, maybe who don't know, I live on 3 acres, and occasionally I'll go hunt the back three.
Nice.
And say I go out and I shoot, what I believe to be the new Pope and Young record buck. What does that process look like? Do I just call you up and just say, hey, man, I think I just shot the record buck? How does the process go?
Well, usually we find out about it because if you shoot something that big, the word gets out. It always gets out. And
your people, you've got agents that are feeding
got
you
people
this
on the ground.
There's people. Yeah, it's actually, I got a call earlier in the year from a buddy of mine up in Alberta, and it's a good friend of mine. He says, "Hey, man, I'm texting you a picture. It's a new world record elk," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." And this is not a hunter. This is a farmer. Great guy, but not exactly the world's foremost. Mind on a new world record. And so I'm like, okay. And then he sends me this picture and I'm like, wow, that's a big bull. And then about 2 weeks later, we started hearing rumblings about this new world record. And sure enough, it's come in. And right now with this COVID stuff, we want to convene a special panel, but we can't get anybody to Canada to do it.
Right.
So this, the trophy owner's being really gracious and trying to work with us. He's like, hey, as soon as the border opens, I'll drive it down across the border. Meet me there. We can. So there's some new challenges, but it's so neat to be part of that.
That's awesome.
To experience it.
Well, I can imagine COVID. You can't get into Canada. That's a huge pain. We've been trying to get into Canada for a while, and I'm ready for them to open back up.
Oh yeah. I just, that's my big thing every year is Alberta. And I missed it last spring, and I told everybody, I said, hey, I'll be there in October. And then it was still shut down in October. And I hope it's open this year.
I hope at least by fall. I know a lot of the outfitters are getting hammered pretty hard by just missing out on a lot of people coming and hunting with them.
Yeah.
So actually, another question comes to mind.
I've heard from several outfitters.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I know I've heard from several outfitters that they can't book any hunts for 2021 because they have to fulfill all their hunts for 2020.
Yep.
So there's no new hunters coming in. It's all. I mean, they can't just say, oh, sorry, you don't get to hunt. So now they have to bring all their 2020 hunters into 2021, and they miss a year.
Yeah, and it's and it not only affects the fall, but some of the outfitters that we work with, they have a really big spring bear season up there.
Yeah.
And they lost that completely. And then they lost most of and it was all at the last minute. I mean, people had flights booked. People were literally on their way, and then everything shut down. And then, and then they come into the fall. So they're like, okay, we'll hopefully live through the spring, make it up in the fall. And then the fall went sideways on them. So there's some guys hurting up there.
Yeah. It's funny all the ways that it affects everybody in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. You don't even think about it. So even I'm getting a hide tanned right now, and it's months delayed to get my hide back from a tanner, which I'm just anxious to get it. But,
your bear?
The bear. Yeah. Did you get yours tanned?
You brought it in.
Was that yours too? Yeah. Oh, you got months, by the way. Yeah. You're not going to see it for a while.
I know. Dang it.
That's the same exact thing happened to me. I took a couple of I took a kudu and a Gimswalk in, over a year ago, and the taxidermist calls me. He says, "Hey man," he says, "your stuff is in with my wife's big blacktail." He says, "We want it back as soon as we can get it, but the tannery's literally shut down." Mm-hmm. And so it's having repercussions all across the world. And trade shows right now, they're a non-existent.
They're non-existent or virtual, which is not the same.
Not the same. And kudos to, like Sheep and everybody for jumping in and doing the virtual shows. I got to experience some of that, and it's great to be part of, but like you say, it's not quite the same as being there in person. So
yeah.
Jason, and this gives us a good opportunity to tell them about our convention. We recently had to reschedule our convention to July 14th through the 17th. And that was one of the big reasons. We hope to push it back far enough to where it can be an in-person show.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it's not the same whatsoever. I was attending ATA from a blind in South Texas while I was hunting, and I'm like, this ain't it.
No.
This ain't, looking at booths and just looking.
That sounds like it.
I mean, if there's a second best, that's pretty sweet, dude.
South Texas. Still bitter.
I'm still bitter.
Must be nice,
How's bragging camp?
We were actually there was like a check-in station because we were only like 2.5 miles from the border, and there was a check-in station, and we come through it, and we've got like 5 bows, 3 guns, tannerite, don't ask why, but we've got trailers full of knives, and I mean just everything. And we pull up to this check station, and they said, "Are you all U.S. citizens?" And my buddy who was driving couldn't understand him. He says, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, crap." And he said, "Excuse me?" And I said, "They ask if you're a citizen." And he's like, "Oh, yes." And so they let us through, thankfully. But I'm like, good Lord, we're about to get checked for all we're worth.
Oh, man. You'll be there for a while. Yeah, that's not a fast process.
Especially when they got to unload a trailer and pull out, everything we've got. And I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
But they let us through, so.
See, we had that similar experience, only we weren't hauling a trailer full of knives and tannerite, but we had gone to Canada just because we were 19 and we wanted to go over there and drink for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we decided not to bring passports on the way over. And so on the re-entry back to the States, they almost had to detain us and had to wait for passports to get there. But
I didn't go with you.
I know, that was
my parents wouldn't let me.
It's it is. Canada has changed. That border has changed so much. The first time I went up, I was with two buddies, and I mean, we were probably early 20s, 21, 22.
Yeah.
And we had a trailer full of decoys, and we're headed up. Just we don't know where we're going. We're just going hunting in Canada. Going to where it starts. And so we pull up to the border. And the guy's like, "Okay, where are you guys from?" We're like, "Oh, Oregon." "Okay, well, you got any guns?" "Yeah." "You haven't?" "How many?" 5 or 7. I think we had 7 for 3 of us. He says, "Do you have any handguns?" "No." "You have any tobacco?" "No." "Alcohol?" "No." "You have any handguns?" "No." "Have a good time." No, I didn't check an ID, didn't check anything. Now it's they still make it pretty easy on us, but you have to go in and either have your pal or fill out the form. But it's definitely changed.
Drop your drawers and let's make sure you're good to go into Canada here. Yeah, put on the glove.
Yeah. I've had them go through my trailer before. So
have you? Yeah, I actually have too. I went in to get a couch my wife ordered. And I went in with an empty flatbed truck, and they were like, I know that they're looking at this like this guy clearly is smuggling something, So on the way in and the way back, they gave me a hard time, but I got right through. So no, it's pretty good. I've not actually had really a bad experience going across the border. We're right in Michigan, so we'll go right over pretty quick. Okay. It's not too big of a deal. So, question for you guys. So we were talking about the process to get somebody entered in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get a lot of cheaters? Do you get people paper macheing extra antlers on or
super
anything
glue?
Like that?
No, we really don't, because you have to be for us to accept. So kind of taking a step back, if you go out and shoot, let's say a big buck, there's a process. There's a drying period. Once it dries for a certain number of days, then you have to get a certified Pope and Young measurer to actually do it. And those guys take it very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so, you have to sign the form, you have to sign a fair chase affidavit saying that, hey, it was taken completely legally with full fair chase guidelines in place. And you have to sign that and send that all in. And then we have a team there in the office that goes through, double checks everything. I mean, they go so far as to look at photos of each side, front, back, top, bottom, left, right. And so if there was anything hinky, I'll tell you, they'd catch it.
They catch it pretty quick. So you can't
Yeah.
paper mache, more.
I've got a buck in my office that should probably get scored out.
You probably should.
You do.
really
You
should.
actually do have one. Yep. The Illinois one.
And if I'm not mistaken, you can go on your guys' website and you can look up local scorers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we have a list of all the certified measures right on our website.
Awesome.
You should get it scored, man.
I really
That'd be pretty
should.
Cool. That's a good. What's the base?
For whitetail,
Yeah, whitetail.
125 typical.
I think mine might even get my.
Oh boy.
I think it might 125. I'm gonna.
Maybe
Dylan,
I should
I'm going to
do
be
that now.
messaging you later. And
I'll tell you what, with this new system, we've got this new record search where you can actually get it on your phone and you can pull up trophies. So I had a guy on an airplane one time, and he was telling me about his buddy who's got, I don't know, 150 Pope and Young elk or whatever. And I was like, oh, really? What's the guy's name? So he told me, and I literally pulled it up on my phone sitting in an airplane. I said, well, he's definitely got 2, but that's the only ones And so it's kind of nice because all of this, we all get that. Hey, you want to see my 200-inch buck? And you look at it and you're like, man, 150 is a great buck.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
but those apps remove all the barroom banter, the lying.
Mm-hmm.
Like now, I'm not going to be like, hey, Jared, I just shot a 200.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the first thing I say is, oh, you got a 200-inch buck? Do you have a copy of the score sheet?
Right.
Because when I see one of my measures, signatures on a 200-inch score sheet, it's a 200-inch buck. Up until that time, it's Billy Bob saying I got 200, and it's like, yeah.
That's a buck score.
I shot a 200-inch buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on my scoring.
Then you woke up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'll say this too. Most of our members are so incredibly traditional and passionate about the hunt that they wouldn't lie.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
They might be wrong occasionally, but it's not just a bold-faced lie.
Right.
Yeah. We don't. Since I've been here, I haven't seen anyone where they were just outright trying to cheat to move up in the book or something. I haven't seen that at all. Yeah. We've seen a few. Oh, here's a math error, or here's a, they didn't do this formula right or something. But I haven't run across any just out to cheat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get our buck scored now.
Yeah.
We should do that. Find somebody local, and I mean, I don't think mine's even the one I have in my.
You never know, man.
Is 120, and maybe it is right around there. It's going to be on the low end, but I'll take it.
See, I had mine.
Absolutely.
I had mine rough scored, like it's green score, but I don't think I've had it. It's dry. Is that the technical term? The dry score?
Yeah, it's green scores. A lot of times guys will get a green score when they first get it, just to give them an idea of where it is.
Yeah.
And then later you come in and get the official score.
Okay. Yeah.
Jason, do you know on average how much a whitetail will shrink? Or is it?
No, Eli or Roy would know. I don't. But there's formulas for all that. They have some pretty good research to where they know how much a pronghorn antelope is going to shrink. They know how much a bighorn. So
you guys have a lot of data points
we do.
That's pretty sweet. Well, what's the hardest? What's statistically the hardest? Speaking of data points, species to get into with
the one that we get the fewest entries every year is a non-typical Columbia blacktail.
Oh, okay.
We get more polar bears than we do non-typical Columbia blacktails.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think there's just not. I mean, there's places. I'm in blacktail country. I live in Western Oregon. I had a couple deer run through my yard this morning, but there's places where I've hunted for years and years, have never seen a non-typical.
Yeah.
And then there's other places, you go more Southern Oregon and they're a little more prevalent, but they're just not as common as what you see in mule deer and whitetails.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just to update everybody, I did look up the actual loss of antler, and they're saying anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of loss during the dry.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
depends if they were in the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if it was raining out.
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So when you guys, and I'm sure you guys get this question a lot, there seems to be public aversion for using the term trophy when you're when you're hunting, like for some reason at all. When people bring that up to you, what's your response? How do you handle something like that?
Everybody's about that. And I'll even use the example I used earlier where we had that Mel Johnson buck literally in the aisle at ATA. And it was funny because guys would come up and say, oh, that's a decent buck. And then you start talking to them about different things. Oh yeah, I shoot some about that size. Oh really? You ever get them scored? No, I don't care about score. What'd that one score? And they all ask. You can't keep
want to know
asking. You want to know. And so, I think the term trophy has gotten a little bit of a bad rap, and I don't know why. Because if you look at the number of world records that are getting broken, when you're shooting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 new world records a year, that is an absolute feather in the cap for the North American model of wildlife conservation. It is like,
it's
just
amazing.
Unheard of. It's working. And, hunters are paying for that. And it's not a bad thing to go out. And if you want to be a trophy hunter, be a trophy hunter. If you want to have fun shooting a fork and horn, then that's what you should do. The main thing is that you get out and enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the sport. And it's, I know a good buddy of mine who shot some tremendous animals he's actually the guy that introduced me to Pope and Young 30 years ago. And he shot some tremendous trophies, several different species in the book. And he and I were out, a couple of years ago, and he shot a fork and horn. He says, you know what? He said, that was a lot of fun. And it was one of those things. You don't have to be either or. You can be both. Yeah. Just be a hunter.
I would say people who say they're not a trophy hunter say it because they never kill big deer, which is my case.
I would agree with you.
No, I because nobody is going to let a 170 whitetail pass and say, I'm not a trophy hunter. I'm looking for a spike.
Yeah,
that's outrageous to think. So, I have no problem shooting small deer. But if a big deer presents itself, I'm not going to say, oh, actually, I'm not a trophy hunter, so I'm not going to shoot the trophy.
Right.
So like Jason said, I think that we try to put this stipulation on it as you have to be one or the other. Well, that's false. That's absolutely false. Now, if I'm hunting my property in Kansas, which I maintain, which I try to manage the deer well, you're right. I'm not going to shoot a spike. But if I'm hunting with my dad in Arkansas and a spike walks out, I'm absolutely going to shoot it. So
right.
I think it's just, but I think we've created that mindset of, oh, you're a trophy hunter, or oh, you're a meat hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I be both?
Yep.
Why can't I just hunt and you just hunt? And I mean, if a deer walks in and gets me fired up, I'm shooting it. That's the whole story.
Well, and it's tough because it puts everybody in a bad spot, This year I had a few days to hunt elk. And so a buddy of mine says, hey, come on up. I've got a spot for you. So I went up, jumped in a ground blind. And on day 3, I shot a small 5-point that most years I'd have been absolutely thrilled with. And then like 2 minutes later, out walks this really nice Pope and Young 6x6. And I'm like, oh, that's the one I wanted. And it puts that in the back of your mind. It's kind of like, oh, how many years would I have been just thrilled to get a shot at a bull like that?
Right.
And then, now is it it's not the trophy. It doesn't make the book. So
right.
Yep. It's a mental thing. And I don't take anything away from the guys who passed, the 5 points to go get the monster. I mean, there's guys that pass big 6. There's guys that pass 6 points that are as big as some of the bulls I've even seen in my life.
Right.
Because they're looking for that next level. And I give them kudos and a lot of respect.
Yeah.
But I think if you talk to those guys, even though that's how they want to do it, they still are good with and still respect the guy that wants to go out there and shoot a spike. Hey, he's got 2 weekends this year he gets to hunt. And if he wants to go shoot a spike bull, then hey, that's more power to him.
Yeah.
And I think
our past president, Jim Willems, this year told me we had lunch one day and I had showed him pictures of my number 1 hit list buck. And I called him one night and said, hey man, I just shot a buck, but it's not the big one. And what I meant by that was it's not the one I showed you pictures of.
Yeah.
Just a heads up. I'm going to send you pictures, and it's not the same deer. And that's what I meant by it. But what he said was, and he said this to me, he said, if you shot, it's the big one.
Right.
And I was
like
just
that.
like,
yeah.
I'm like, that's what it should be all about, man.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have to justify to anybody what I shot or why I shot it.
Yeah.
It walked out, it got my blood pumping, so I shot it. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And so that's forever going to be a quote that I hold on to. If you shot, it's the big one.
Yeah, and that's coming from a guy who would pass a 180 buck for the 190.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's done it.
Yeah.
So
and the thing is, I think sometimes we get so over analytical. We overthink some pretty simple things. It's like you're going hunting. Obviously, like who would actually say that they're not, if choice between a big and a small deer, they're not going to take the big deer, whether you're a meat hunter or you're a trophy hunter. But at the end of the day, it's like sometimes you only get a shot at the little one, like you're still out there to hunt. And it, again, whether you go, I think it's all a trophy if you think about it. I am so excited when I get a deer, big or small. It's a trophy in different ways. You get to eat it. You get to tell stories about it. The antlers are always just like an awesome bonus that you can look at. Like I'm looking at you got two muleys and whatever that African animal is in the middle.
Kudu.
Yeah, I thought so, but I don't know enough. So I was like, if I say kudu and I'm totally wrong, they're gonna look at me like, no, So, but what I'm saying is, you look at those, and I mean, they're beautiful animals, but also you can point to that and be like, that, I can tell you a story about that deer. This is what was happening here. And I think that is almost more important than
I can promise you, Jason still ate those, even though they were big.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
There's only been one time, because you said that, you're always going to take the big one. I actually was several years ago, it was the last day of a bow hunt for elk.
Yep.
And I had two cows right in front of my blind, and I'm like, you know what? It's the last day. I love eating elk. Mm-hmm. And so I drew back and I settled in on the big one, the bigger cow. And I'm like, okay, I was just settling in, getting ready to go. And I'm like, wait, you know what? That other one's probably more tender. And so I literally switched to one that was a little, more of a yearling cow. Yeah. And it was delicious.
Was it more tender?
I don't know, because I never got to try the other one. I only got to shoot one.
You need a double shooter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, that's
my dad.
That's the hardest thing for me about bow hunting is it's like, as a longtime bird hunter, man, you can have an epic, once in a lifetime day, and then the next day you get to go do it again.
Yeah.
With bow hunting, I have a once in a lifetime day. I have to wait till next year to do it again. That's really hard for me.
Yep.
My dad always tells me a story of a guy, and he was an old timer, and down at his deer camp, and he said they'd be sitting in the blind, and there'd be 5 or 6 deer out in the field, and he'd go to shoot and shoot. And my dad'd say, "Oh man, you missed, man. What happened?" And he'd say, "I didn't miss." And my dad would look out, and sure enough, the little yearling would be laying on the ground, and out of all the 7, but he wanted the little tender one. But so he always picked the small one. But my dad also always said you can't eat the horns, but you can certainly use them to stir your stew. So
I like that. You know what works best for that? Spikes. A spike is a great mixer. You don't want too many antlers. You can't fit it in the pot.
Or a fork. Right. You got to stab them.
Those muleys behind you, they would be terrible pot mixers. You might have to let those pass.
Absolutely.
It just reminds me of the was it Dan Fitzgerald? What did he say? That must be a Boone and Crockett spike.
Boone and Crockett spike.
Because he shoots this spike. It's a whitetail with and I remember thinking I know that's not how it works, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I don't know if they have a category for that.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
So
not.
So you guys have been doing a podcast. You guys have been, doing a lot of outreach stuff. What are your plans for this year? We got a new administration in. We've got, a lot of things going on. What are your big initiatives? What are the big things you guys are pushing?
Right now, our big thing, we just decided this past week to move our convention into July. So that's one of our priorities. We owe that to our trophy owners and to the folks out there, our outfitter partners and our corporate partners who want to have that event. So that's kind of a big priority.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're going to keep an eye out for especially the key pieces of legislation coming across that affect bow hunting.
Yeah.
we can all have our own personal convictions and vote for whoever we want to, because this is America.
Right.
But we have to be able to work with the folks, on both sides of the aisle, because we need votes from both of them to get things passed that are important to us.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're looking at, is no matter who's in there, we're going to work with them. We're going to do the very best job that we can to, to promote and protect bow hunting, give more opportunities to the bow hunters out there.
Yeah. I really like what you said, where, it doesn't really matter your political party. At the end of the day, we're all hunters, and we all need to kind of unite under that banner to preserve what we love all the time. Yeah. And I think that's really awesome.
And it's and that's the tactic of the antis, is they're not trying to come in and shut off all hunting at one time. They're doing part of it. They're gonna start with bear hunting.
Yeah, I know.
And then they're gonna come over and then they're gonna attack bow hunting or duck hunting or one thing or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just gonna single us off, and they're gonna pick us off. And we as hunters, we need to stick together, because same thing for those out there that maybe don't hunt, but you enjoy the outdoors, you like to fish, you like to hike. We need to stand together, because that Pittman Robertson money is what's supporting a lot of this, outdoor conservation. You like to hike, well, that's great, but
you like nice trails, you like things maintained.
Yeah. Thank the hunters that paid for that.
Yeah.
And we've got to stick together as outdoors people to make sure that we have a place to hunt and to make sure we can.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's kind of where that goes back to how we can support elk hunting, we can support deer hunting, we can support, at the end of the day, I don't care if you're a trad shooter, I don't care if you're a compound shooter, I don't care if you're an elk hunter, a deer hunter, a squirrel hunter. We're all hunters. We're all bow hunters.
Yep.
And when we unite and when we stand and we fight for one another, I'm not a sheep hunter, but if I fight for sheep hunters, then when it's my turn to be on the chopping block, the sheep hunters will fight for me.
Yeah.
So if we'll all work together and have that mentality of, I might not hunt in California, but if I stand up and fight for California bow hunting rights, then when it's my turn, then when Kansas is on the chopping block, California can stand up and fight for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We've seen, I mean, it makes total sense if you're against hunting. What's the best way to beat it? You start fractioning creating these little fractions and pulling them off. Bear hunting was you mentioned, and we've seen a lot of. We did a bear hunt, and we had a lot of people write in about
of pushback.
Just about bear hunting. These guys were hounds hunters that we went with, houndsmen, and just the you can see the fractions that are starting to occur, and it's unsettling a little bit. At least it was for us.
And it's, they came in and did away with hound hunting here in Oregon years ago for bears and cougars. And, what people don't understand is that those dogs, that's all they want to do. It's like duck dogs. All my dog ever wants to do is go get ducks. He doesn't care when, where, how cold it is.
Right.
And same thing with those bear dogs. They long for that. If they're not hunting, they wish they were hunting.
Yeah.
And what I saw here, when it went away, is the traditions and there were dogs that could be traced back farther than most people I know. The generational, like 20, 30 generations of, hey, I know who his great to the nth degree grandfather is. And it's like, that, and then that's just gone.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, because it's a lifestyle of people that's what they want to do. They're not bothering anybody.
No.
And
they're contributing a lot of hunter dollars, and they're helping with manage the wild resources that we have. They're doing all the things that we've all decided were good, except they use dogs rather than bait piles.
Yeah.
Right. And that's this weird line, and so you can see how these little cracks can form.
Yeah.
And can cause like you said, it down the line. The slippery slope. That's you can see where that could go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, California, not only can you not shoot a mountain lion in California, if you shoot one legally in Idaho, you can't even bring it home.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's, in fact, one of the Cal Fish and Game guys got in some serious hot water several years ago because he had been somewhere and he didn't even bring it back. He just shot one legally in another state, 100% legal. Everything was above board, and everybody was all over him because you're not, he couldn't do it in California, and that's just not acceptable.
No,
I just don't it. That's a part of me. I was born in August and September. I was in deer camp. That's just how I grew up. I can't imagine not hunting.
Yep.
And the difference is, okay, I may not be a golfer, but I don't want to shut down everybody else's ability to golf. I don't,
right.
And it's really hard, I think, for a lot of us to understand because it's so personal to us and it is so who we are.
Yeah.
And then, these antis come in and they literally want to shut down your very existence, your heritage, your traditions. And it's hard to accept.
It is. And it's, like you said, I mean, it seems it's just, you're not seeing the big picture, I guess. When you do things like that, the hunting community, adds so much to trail maintenance and, everything else
overshadowed
that makes fishing and everything else work. It's a pretty neat system that's set up and it's working well. And it's, part of it's owed to groups like you who, full time are pushing for, deer hunters in some sense, or Rocky Mountain elk, or in your case just archery hunting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we're big fans of the archery hunting, so we appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we'll be looking for those $2 to be entered.
Yeah, we'll do it. We're coming up on time here, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to tell people where they can go to find out more, listen to your podcast, check out the upcoming event that you moved and things like that. So where can people go?
Are you paused, Jason? You want me to handle it?
Well, hey, man,
I was like, go.
You're the marketing director.
Yeah,
this is all
Dylan.
you, baby.
So I would say the best place to get information is social media, Facebook, Instagram, as well as our website. Also, if you become a member, then you'll get our weekly e-blasts, which give up-to-date information about things like convention, things like a new world record, things like new press releases with new corporate partners and things of that sort. So becoming a member really is probably the best way to stay in touch with everything we're doing, because we'll send you out the weekly messages as to what's going on with the club. But podcast is really good, where we can send out and talk about information. And so, I would say those four things are the best way to get information on us.
And our website is just www.pope-young.org.
Yep.
Awesome.
Easy to find.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We've got a lot of good information on there, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And everybody who's listened, check them out.